Hi, both. Thanks for joining us today on our Business Gurus channel, where we will be discussing key business topics to help students grasp the most important elements of their course in preparation for their exams and future career. Let's get started.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a closer look at this huge sector that often flies a bit under the radar, the not for profit or voluntary sector. These are organizations driven by need, not necessarily by, well, the bottom line, like traditional businesses. Our sources give us a really interesting view behind the scenes. And our mission today, well, it's not just listing what they do, but really getting into their DNA. If profit isn't the main driver, what does success even look like for them? What are the actual concrete goals pushing them forward?
That's the key question,
Yeah.
definitely, because this sector, it's massive. When you look at the source material, it covers everything, really.
Hmm.
Small local community groups, huge international charities, even social enterprises doing innovative stuff. But the common thread is that their resources, their money, their effort, it's all for a specific purpose, a mission, not for making individuals rich.
Okay, right. Let's try and unpack that because you hear not for profit, and maybe you think, oh, they don't care about business principles at all. But looking at the core objectives documented in our sources, you see their goals actually create this fascinating tension in how they operate.
Precisely. Yeah, some people call it profit for purpose. The sources lay out three specific objectives. And it's really the tension between the first two, which sound very financial, and the third, the purely mission-driven one, that defines their whole challenge. So the first objective is pretty clear, increasing revenue from donations. Now, a normal business makes money selling things for more than they cost, right? But NFPs, they rely heavily on outside money, donations, grants, fundraising. That's what keeps the lights on and the work happening.
And objective number two is like the other side of that coin. Reduce costs. Okay, that sounds like typical corporate advice, doesn't it? But here, being inefficient has totally different consequences. If a regular company cuts costs, maybe the shareholders get a bit more money. But when an NFP cuts costs,
Hmm.
what's the real payoff?
The payoff is direct impact. Absolutely. Every pound, every dollar saved on, I don't know, admin or supplies, that's a pound or a dollar that can go straight to the actual program.
Mm.
Feeding someone, research for a cure, providing essential services. So efficiency for an NFP is, well, it's paramount.
Mm.
It directly affects how much good they can actually do.
I get that. That makes sense. But here's where it gets tricky, and I think this is really interesting. If you're pushing for maximum efficiency, cutting every possible cost, don't you risk sort of gutting the very things you need to operate effectively? I mean, the sources say they need to increase revenue, right? That needs professional marketing, skilled staff, maybe decent tech. How do they manage that tension? Cutting costs versus investing to actually grow their fundraising.
That is a brilliant point. And it's the tightrope, isn't it? They're constantly walking it.
Mm.
Donors often say they want 100% of their money going to the cause. But the source material shows sophisticated fundraising. It costs money. It requires investment. There are metrics like donor acquisition cost, DAC. Spend too little, and your donations flatline. Spend too much, and suddenly you're facing criticism about admin costs being too high. It's this constant public scrutiny that, frankly, most private companies just don't face in the same way.
Okay, so the financial stuff, getting more money in, spending less, it's really a means to an end. It's the engine, maybe. But the destination, the thing that really defines this whole sector, that's the third objective, to provide for those in need. The financial health is just the fuel for that humanitarian journey.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, yeah, it means the NFT sector has to be incredibly smart, almost as commercially savvy as any big corporation, just to stay afloat and grow. But here's the twist. Every single decision about spending money, about investment, it's ultimately measured against social return, not just financial return. It makes their whole strategy incredibly demanding, this sort of interdependent system.
Let's make this real. Let's dive into a huge, very visible example that I think shows this balancing act perfectly. Business goals, meeting social aims, sport relief. We all see the TV shows, the celebrities, but maybe we don't always appreciate the massive logistical operation needed just to hit those financial targets they set.
Sport relief is, yeah, a perfect case study of executing those financial objectives under immense pressure. And we actually have some concrete figures from 2023 that really show this scale and, frankly, the complexity involved.
Okay, hit us with those numbers because they really are something else. In 2023, Sport Relief pulled in, wait for it, 51,242,186 cities. 51 million pounds. I mean, that doesn't just happen, does it? That's the result of an incredibly well-oiled machine designed purely to achieve that goal.
That's
increase revenue.
exactly. And what's really fascinating is looking at how they reach that, pretty aggressive target. It shows real tactical skill. The sources mentioned it was this multi-pronged approach needing intense management. Just think about the complexity. First, you got the big one, the live TV shows. Highly visible, right? But that means complex broadcast logistics, systems for handling donations instantly, managing celebrities, huge production budgets with high risks, all geared towards maximizing viewer giving in just a few hours.
And that TV push, it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It's supported by the other methods, like organizing tons of fundraising events happening all over the country, often at the same time. That needs central coordination, assessing risks, getting local volunteers on board, making sure everything's legally sound for every single donation. It's like running a temporary pop-up multinational company for a short period.
Absolutely, a huge undertaking. And then the third method mentioned is merchandise sales. So now they're basically in the retail business too, managing supply chains, tracking stock, ensuring quality, setting prices that feel fair, but also maximize the money going to charity. It's a smart strategy, really, to diversify how they bring money in so they're not just relying on one big TV night.
Okay, so that really paints a picture of the first two objectives in action. Huge revenue targets, needing super efficient execution of complex events to keep costs down and get the biggest possible amount at the end. But ultimately, all that hard work, all that operational savvy, it's all for the third goal, the impact. So that massive 51 million plus, where did it actually go? How is it used to provide for those in need?
Right, the crucial part. The funds went to support projects both around the world and, importantly, right here in the UK. And this is where you see the sort of measurable social success. The source material details how the money was targeted at specific critical problems.
Yeah, it's not just vague doing good, it's strategic. The sources say the money was channeled into three main areas: tackling poverty, both abroad and at home, also investing significantly in promoting mental health support, and providing vital funding for youth empowerment programs.
Exactly. So the success of that whole financial machine we talked about, it's directly measured by the scale and quality of the social programs it makes possible. The financial goals give them stability, sure, but it's the successful running of programs helping with poverty, mental health, youth issues. That's the real yardstick for their impact. They're judged on improving human welfare, not quarterly profits.
It really does change how you look at a big charity campaign, doesn't it? You start to understand that running a really effective NFP means this constant juggling act. Balancing sharp financial management, the kind needed for 50 million operations, with really careful, compassionate use of every single pound towards that specific social mission. It's like demanding corporate level efficiency, but under constant ethical pressure.
That's the key takeaway, I think. That's what you should really walk away with today. The NFT sector needs operating strategies that are, you could argue, even more refined and definitely more scrutinized than many traditional businesses. Because if they fail financially, well, that failure translates directly and immediately into failing the people they exist to help.
So what does this all mean then? We started off maybe thinking of the voluntary sector as just the, I don't know, the nice alternative to business. But this deep dive shows it's actually this complex world, often operating on a massive scale, needing really high-level strategic thinking to manage, over 51 million pounds for just one campaign. It's quite something.
Let me leave you with this thought, something maybe to chew on. Just consider, when a not-for-profit doesn't meet its financial targets, let's say they miss their fundraising goal by 10% because an event didn't go well, or maybe their admin costs creep up due to some inefficiency. That shortfall, that operational slip-up, it's felt instantly. And tragically, it doesn't just mean a slightly lower share price. It might mean 10% fewer people getting vital mental health support, or 10% fewer community projects getting off the ground. That direct link makes their operational goals uniquely demanding and incredibly sensitive ethically to how well they perform.
Wow. Yeah. A really fascinating look at the high-stakes business of trying to maximize human well-being. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks to both of you for joining us today. You've been listening to the Business Gurus. Let's now hand it over to you. What further questions do you have based on what we've discussed so far? Leave a comment and we'll get back to you right away. If you haven't already, hit that follow for more business tips.